Hey, fifth graders. So I'm going to pick up where we left off, which was because of Miss Bigsby, they had just ran into George Nelson, the person that stole their money. He got onto the bus. All three characters notice he's there now. And they have some type of plan. At least Bran does. It doesn't matter, Bran says. Just give the phone to Topher and be prepared to get off at whatever stop George does. I don't want to give my phone to Topher. I know what happened to his last one, and I certainly don't want to get off at whatever stop George does. But Bran says somebody needs to hang back with the phone and stay out of the way, and with his swollen ankle, Topher is the best man for the job. Stay out of the way of what? I ask, but Bran says, don't worry, he has a plan. The day Bran sat down next to us, there were 6 other empty seats. I know because I counted them. Of course, of the 7 total empty seats, 3 were at all-girl tables, so I understand why he might have avoided them. But still, there was still only a 25% chance that he would sit next to us. 1 in 4 is better than 1 in 7 billion, but it's still against the odds. When he sat down at lunch with us that first day, I remember looking over at Topher. It was a look that said, tell him to go away. I couldn't tell him because I'm a firm believer in not saying anything that will get me either beat up or into trouble. But Topher didn't say go away. He said, sure, have a seat. So Bran sat down with us and I counted the empty chairs. The first week I tried everything I could think of to convince him that he didn't belong with us. I tried pretending he didn't exist. I forgot to invite him over to my house after school whenever I invited Topher. I sent him a note from Mindy Winkler asking if he would sit by her at lunch instead, but that backfired when Mindy had to get her braces tightened the next day and didn't even bother to come to school, making Bran wonder who the note was from. I said I didn't know. It wasn't that I didn't like Bran. He had never shot any spit wads into my hair. He never tried to push me down the stairs or burped in my face. All he did was sit down at our table at lunch, but at that time I hated him, just for sitting down, because I wasn't sure what it meant, because it had always been just Topher and me. To make matters worse, he seemed nice, and he had seen all the right movies and knew lots of good jokes, and Topher obviously thought he was cool, which meant there was a good chance, that over time Topher might choose him over me, and that simply couldn't happen. We are ninjas. That's what Topher says as we get off the bus. Stealth and subterfuge. Actually, he says sublidity, but I think he meant subterfuge. Though I suppose a ninja could be subtle too, until they cut your head off with a katana. We don't have katanas. I have a Carhartt multi-purpose tool that has a knife blade on it, sharp enough to cut mud. We didn't even think to bring forks for the cheesecake. Topher says it doesn't matter. We just need to walk like ninjas. We aren't beheading anyone. I don't know how ninjas walk, but I assume it is on their tiptoes. So I walk on my tiptoes, though after a while that hurts. And I just walk regular, but slow, keeping against the brick walls of the buildings we pass. I'm with Topher, who walks like a ninja with his toes chopped off, limping and stumbling and reaching out occasionally to put a hand on my shoulder. I'm keeping an eye on Bran, who was on the other side of the street. He's the one trailing George Nelson, staying a good 20 yards away, waiting for just the right moment. I'm not sure what the right moment is. All I know is that he will give me the signal. I suddenly feel the urge to pee. I didn't go at the bookstore when I had the chance, and I whisper that to Topher, who tells me ninjas don't pee. I tell him that is biologically impossible and historically inaccurate. He asks me if I ever seen a ninja pee in a movie. I told him I'd never seen anyone pee in a movie. He says ninjas don't talk about peeing either, and we should maintain mission silence from here on out. So I just follow the sidewalk, keeping one eye on our target and the other on Bran, waiting for just the right moment. George Nelson still has his earbuds in and seems completely unaware of our presence, no matter how we walk. Only once does he look in our direction and I freeze. Topher nearly crashes into me. The man doesn't register us though. He's just checking for cars before crossing. Easier to do when you're not being chased. He crosses the intersection, then turns down a small alleyway behind a corner drugstore. This apparently is the moment. Bran gives a signal, wildly slapping the top of his head with both hands. More surprised baboon than stealthy ninja, but unmistakable at least. Topher motions for me to go. I'll be right behind you, he whispers. Bran points to the alley's entrance and then makes some other motion with his hand, something about a tornado or spinning ballerina, and then he sprints off from the front of the Walgreens. Topher calls out behind me, "Go, cut him off!" I run a little faster, thinking about the lumpy cheesecake still bouncing in my backpack, getting lumpier. What a terrible idea this is. Running to confront a grown man, a criminal named after a cop killer, no less, in a deserted alleyway in the middle of downtown. I say a quick prayer as I come to the alley entrance, pressing my back firmly against the wall, leaning to take a look. George Nelson is there. He stopped about 20 feet away and is looking at a poster pasted to the door. I look for Bran. Bran is the one who is going to confront him. I'm just supposed to make sure he doesn't get away. Of course, if he tries to get away, I don't know how I will stop him. My parents enrolled me in Taekwondo one summer, but let me quit when the school year started back up. Straight A's are more important than learning to defend yourself. In 3 months of classes, I learned 4 words in Korean and how to tie my belt. If George Nelson wants to get past me, he will. I don't see Bran. I look to make sure Topher is limping up behind me. He's still a block away. I turn back around. George Nelson is staring at me. He looks confused for a moment. He cocks his head sideways, and then I see a flash in his eyes. The moment he realizes who I am, that annoying little Chinese kid he adopted outside the liquor store. 15,000 people are murdered in cold blood each year. I don't know why I know this. Now I wish I didn't. George Nelson holds the brown paper bag against his chest with one hand, then reaches down to the pocket of his jeans with another. And for a split second, I think, this is it. He's got a gun. He's going to shoot me. He's going to die right here in this alleyway without even having graduated from elementary school. And it's strange. But my very first thought is, who will come back to my funeral? And will my sister even bother to wear black? And what will my father say about me? Probably something about not being able to realize my own potential. I don't have time to imagine the rest of the eulogy because at that moment, George Nelson turns and bolts toward the other end of the alleyway. He's actually running away from me. Except I'm supposed to keep him from getting away. That's my role in the plan. So I yell, "Stop!" He hesitates for only a second, then something drops out of the sky in front of him. Maybe it's spending so much time with Topher, but my first thought is Batman. Except this something has a dorky-looking cartoon tiger on his chest. Then I realize it's only Bran, who has jumped off the roof of the drugstore, landing first on the dump store, then hitting the pavement, blocking George Nelson's way, trapping him between us. I can't help it. I'm impressed. That was impressive. So he jumped off the roof of the drugstore, landed on a dumpster. Wow, so kind of did do a Batman move there. George Nelson looks back and forth from me to Bran, still clutching his brown paper bag and whatever is inside it. I take a quick glance for Topher. There's no sign of him. He was just there a second ago, I swear, but all I can see is another set of dumpsters, an empty cardboard box. I want to go look for him, but I can't leave Bran alone in the alley with this man. "Where's our money, George?" My head whips back at the sound of Bran's voice, though it doesn't sound quite like him. I think he's making his voice deep, huskier on purpose. "This is a joke, right?" George says. He's not laughing or even smiling. $25. Where is it?" "I don't have your money." "We had an agreement," Bran says. George tightens his grip on the bag, takes 3 steps backwards, so he's about halfway between Bran and me. He looks unsteady, off balance, but his eyes are slit, starting back and forth. "Come on, kid, really? What did you think was going to happen? You're too young to be drinking anyways." "But not too young for you to steal our money?" Bran takes a step towards George Nelson. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is from here. Bran didn't say. Cut him off? Don't let him escape? That was it. I take another look for Topher, but I still don't see him. With a sneer, George Nelson closes the remaining distance between him and Bran. "Out of the way, kid. Give us back our money," Bran says, much cooler than I ever could. He refuses to move. I would have moved. "I'm not going to ask you again." George Nelson spits on the pavement between Bran's feet. It's a standoff. I count in my head. 1 second, 2, 3. Then the man gives Bran a shove, hands to chest. Bran stumbles backward, but quickly recovers and shoves. right back. Hard. Harder than I could have anticipated. Harder than George Nelson probably expected. Hard enough that the man staggers backwards, spinning toward me, only a few feet away. Before I know it, Bran is right on top of him, pushing him into me, and the three of us are tangled together. I try to yell for Topher, his name sticking in my throat. The man stumbles, takes a step back, and I see his fist. Not the one holding, but the other one, the one that leads to the dragon, swing out. Bran ducks at the last moment, and George Nelson's left hook misses him completely. I'm standing right next to Bran, but I don't think to duck. 3 months of Taekwondo, but they never covered ducking. The pain is instant, explosive, as George's punch lands square on my jaw, tooth loosening and intense. The brick wall spins, quickly replaced by the pavement underneath me as I bang my head. From my new spot on the ground, I get a darkened glimpse of Bran swinging his backpack around, catching George Nelson across the face, distracting him long enough for Bran to tackle him at his knees, driving him backward, catching him off balance, slamming them both into the side of the building. I decide it's best to just stay on the ground. The two of them topple over each other and wrestle for a moment, limbs flailing, hands and faces, though Bran actually seems to have the advantage, as George fights one-handed, the other one still holding his bag out of reach, protecting it like it's the Holy Grail. George grunts, pushing Bran off of him, and the two of them wobble back to their feet. George Nelson looks like he's about to take another swing at Bran, but then he stops, staring down the alleyway past me at something in the dumpster. Topher, finally, he pops up out of nowhere, holding my phone. "Did you get it?" Bran calls out, taking a step backwards, keeping his eyes on George Nelson. "I got it." "What? What'd you get? What's he doing?" George Nelson huffs. "Well, about 3 seconds ago, I was getting some awesome close-up video of you punching my friend, except it's not called punching, not when you're doing it to a 12-year-old kid unprovoked." "What's that called again?" Topher asks. "Assault and battery," Bran says, stepping over to help me up. I claw my way up his shirt. My teeth feel loose in their sockets. I can taste blood in my mouth. For some reason, it hurts just to blink.